Welcome to
What's a block?
Triple Blockheads,
Back set. Block down.
the podcast for all things volleyball.
Blockhead.
Aloha to all, and welcome to the first episode of Triple Blockheads. My name is Makani Cantor, and I'm flanked by my fellow volley mates here, Marc Neef.
Hello, welcome.
And my boy, Frank.
What's up?
If you love volley, whether you're in the development stage, you're in the collegiate phase, playing in the middle of your career, or hey, you just like a volley nerd like me, just love the game and passionate about the game, this is the podcast for you. It's been a journey, fellas. It's been about brainchild for probably 6-8 months and a couple of calls, and now we're here. And hey, just want to talk through how did you get into volleyball?
Yeah, so I grew up in SoCal, so volleyball was everywhere around me without really realizing it. And but I was a basketball kid growing up, and I had a great middle school coach who kind of coached all the sports, but had like a really good volleyball background. So shout out Denny Lennon. So we would play volleyball in the spring, and we were playing on like asphalt, out diving on the ground, and so volleyball's always kind of been there. But going to high school, I wanted to play basketball, and the volleyball team wasn't very good. So I was like, oh, that's my chance to play varsity as a freshman. I'm gonna go out and play. I'm gonna go out and play volleyball. And then just got hooked on it from there, and then got introduced to the club volleyball world, and it was a journey that I didn't realize would be this long, but here we are. And
Oh, you're in the middle of that, man.
yeah, for real. And yeah, so played club ball in California, and then played some junior college ball, and then ended up in Iowa to finish out my college career, and still here.
Yeah. Your development journey is quite similar to a lot of, especially men's volleyball, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of the game finds you in different ways. What about you, Mark?
I'd say I have a more unorthodox path to where I am now, but kind of grew up in a volleyball family. I have an older sister that was always kind of the role model, so I was that little kid at club tournaments up against the wall with a ball, just peppering or trying to make a new friend. You're
Like a tournament director's worst nightmare.
Yeah, I
Kid
for sure.
breaking stuff.
Wait, hold on, Mark. The ball's on the court again.
Yeah, I am for sure got called over the PA, like no ball handling in between courts during the match. That was generally directed at me, for sure. But my father started reffing and was a coach and played as well, so it's just kind of been in the family. But I grew up in Southwest Missouri, so there weren't a ton of men's volleyball opportunities for me. So I started coaching at a really young age. While I was a student in high school and played basketball, I took to coaching. I was a student assistant for our high school team all 4 years, and then similarly when I went to college, I played basketball again and was a student assistant for the volleyball program. And about halfway through my collegiate career, decided coaching's really where I saw my future and where I wanted to go. And 16 years later, in my third season at Iowa State now. So
That's awesome. Yeah, go Clones there, huh? So yeah, what's interesting is that we're so familiar with just the overall club process in the United States right now, and our journey to get into volleyball was so much not that, right? It was not the club route. Myself, I never played volleyball until I was a freshman in high school. I, was soccer and basketball and, track and tennis and all these other types of things. But volleyball found me just because I wanted to stay in shape. I wanted to do something else, and it just became my passion. I did a local club team. We didn't travel off the island at all. I mean, volleyball's around, right? So, I mean, you play beach and you do things, during, in your elementary, middle school days just for fun because it's there. Everybody watched University of Hawaii. Those are the heydays of University of Hawaii. Shout out to all those alums. But found me. It became my passion. Moved from Hawaii all the way out to Iowa to go to school and start my collegiate career out here. It's been amazing. Got to meet you guys too out here. It's really kind of shaped my life, honestly. And I think that's why it's such a passion for me. Even though I work full time, I don't actually make volleyball my salary. It's not what I do. It's who I am. So I think there's different ways and different paths you can take in this volleyball world. Frank, Tell us about your playing career. What brought you to Iowa, QC?
My playing career. So I was a setter. I was really fortunate growing up that I got to play a lot. Like I played a high school team that I was the only club player after a while. So I was relied upon to set a bunch of balls out of system, got really good on like setting on the run, which was frustrating at the time. But as I got older and started playing really good volleyball, I realized it was something that kind of like separated me a bit. And that was kind of like my calling card, I think, when I got to St. Ambrose and we were competing for a national championship. I felt like that was something I was able to bring to like all the squads as I got older. But yeah, I played junior college volleyball in California, and that's really competitive. It's the only state that's got junior college men's volleyball. So we were playing, with kids from California, but also kids from Hawaii who wanted to come out, kids from Chicago who didn't get a 4-year, look, so they were coming to California to extend their career. And that's where I think I really learned like the habits necessary to give myself a chance to maybe go play at a 4-year. And that was hard. Like I was the class of 2011 in high school, and there were not a lot of men's teams. I mean, now there's a few more men's teams. You have a great chance of playing somewhere now. But man, you had to be like in the state, you had to probably be in like the top 25 in your position to like have a chance to play D2 or a really good NAIA program. So I took that really serious. I wanted to give myself a chance to like maybe see if I could go play at a good school. And by the time I got to St. Ambrose, the big thing for me was I just wanted the chance to win. I never felt like I had a really good chance to be on a team that had a chance to win a championship. And it's like what an opportunity that would be regardless of my role. And that was a decision I would do over and over again. Didn't play a lot at St. Ambrose, but man, I got to play really good volleyball every single day against people who wanted the same thing as me. And that's something that builds relationships for life. And I think, we'll probably talk about that a bunch throughout this,
For sure.
this series. Just like, what are we doing volleyball for? Are we doing it just for the one and done mindset? The 1 year at this club, I bounced to a different club for 1 year. Like, are you building relationships that that matter, that that you'll look back on? And that's what I think I remember the most about my playing career is like we lost in the Final Four a couple times, but man, like getting to do it with those teammates, wouldn't trade for the world.
Yeah, there's so many nuggets there too. I mean, just the journey of where you end up is all. There's so many paths on how you develop and how you turn yourself into whatever prospect that you want to be.
Yeah.
I mean, is that just, hey, I want to play and I just want to make sure that I'm going to go with my boys and I'm going to play with that team, or hey, I'm going to challenge myself and push myself to a point where I want to be in this. I want to be spoken about in this group of players and that type of level. It doesn't have to be one. There's no right answer. And I think the authenticity of just finding your own path of what kind of prospect you want to be is just super important. I know for me, like I came and played at Graceland for a couple of years, and it was really fast for me that I was here to play and get my education, but the volleyball part of it flipped quickly from loving to play to absolutely being passionate about the game. And those are two different things to me. Like, I love to play, but there's people that were surrounding that program, and shout out to Stu McDowell, just a legend, that just created this fire. And coaching was my path. Obviously, from a men's and boys side, there's not as many opportunities to go and play as you mentioned, especially in the for me in the late '90s. But that coaching part of it is you can be that for however long you want to do it, right? You can be involved and continue to grow and continue to meet new people. For someone who, you didn't go that path and you went into the coaching path. I mean, that's the spirit of the game itself, So, I mean, I don't know, Mark, I think it's awesome that we have 3 different perspectives, right? Like, and your view is so different than our path as well.
Yeah, that path that you guys took is a little bit more traditional. I think what you hit on through your explanation was important. You have to have that love of the game and then develop a passion for the game. And I think, especially on the women's side, if you have both of those things, you can find an opportunity at that next
100%.
level, at whatever level it is. There's so many options out there, but if you really have a love for the game and a passion, you can find a home that will help foster that love and passion moving forward. Yeah. But my perspective to, I guess, more of a passion of sport is kind of how it grew, and then it became more of a love of learning and watching that light bulb kind of go off for players. That's really my why now, is why I push and do what I do. Is I love to see kids learn and see that light bulb click and them be able to do something that they've never. Oh, hardly ever. But we're lucky when it does go off, and finding different ways to say this exact same message until something eventually clicks like that. That's a fun challenge. Like I think that's a big reason why we do what we do.
Yeah, and it's I think it's even more special for, especially for you two, from a club perspective and then from a collegiate perspective, seeing the development early, and then go through the recruiting process, prospect process, and seeing them develop through that middle part, and then seeing them actively achieve some of those things that you saw maybe 5 years ago, in the collegiate side. And I think it's. I don't necessarily think that prospects and players and families even realize like how long that process is, right? It's not just the discussion part. It's, hey, Mark is talking to Frank about, this 13-year-old, and they're just, hey, having a conversation, just, talking about what's new, who's developing, and then, seeing that development from, I have players, that I've coached at Grandview that have families and have kids that are starting volleyball. And then once you get to that point in your coaching career, and you kind of look back, and it comes full circle. So you're involved in their lives for so much longer than I think that people think.
Most definitely. And I'm reaching that age now where players that I coached once upon a time have entered the coaching realms, and I've had some opportunities to work with some of those people. It's definitely a full circle moment, but that's one of the great things about the sport of volleyball is it's a for life thing. It's a sport you can play throughout your adulthood into your 50s, 60s. My dad played until his 50s for a while before he hung up the knee pads, I guess. But it's a nice opportunity to reflect on kind of all the lives that you've been able to affect throughout that process, and it just keeps growing. Hopefully, one of my goals is to never be somebody's last coach, but that's a little bit harder now at the collegiate level that I'm at. But to still have them love the sport and continue to make it a part of their life post when they graduate and leave college and get ready for that next phase, that volley nerd phase of their life. Yeah. Like, that's a big thing for me. How do you continue to build love in such a great sport, great opportunity?
How do you be a blockhead?
Yeah.
That's it right there.
That is Blockhead 101, right? Absolutely.
When do you guys think that shift changed for you whenever it went from, I really like volleyball, I enjoy this sport, to now I'm passionate and this is something I want to push forward for?
I think my personality has developed a lot because I'm a little more mature now than when I was a prep athlete. But for me, it was when I saw other setters that I didn't jive with play better than me. That's, I just had a competitive edge that kicked in, and I was like, I want to be better than that person. And probably wasn't the healthiest perspective as a prep athlete, but that's when it really clicked for me. Like, that's when I was like, I have to get stronger. I need to jump higher. These are the setters that are really good. I want to be better than them. What do they do that is better than me? And how do I get better at it? And that's when I started just being in the club gym every single day. And I had an awesome volleyball club growing up. We weren't the most notorious SoCal volleyball club, but we had a gym, and we had a bunch of really cool coaches that allowed us to come in the gym whenever. if you were a 17-year-old guy and you wanted to come practice with the 13-year-old girls because you wanted to get some setting reps when they were passing, like you were allowed to come do that. And I was allowed to feed off of that. And I just tried to like win the reps race. I wanted to get as many reps as possible. I didn't care if it was a 13-year-old passing to me or if I was setting some 15-year-old girls while they were working on hitting one balls for the first time. I was like, I'm gonna get in the gym today. And but that's when it clicked for me. It was like, man, just I hated feeling like I was the worst setter on the court.
That'll get you.
Yeah.
That competitive
The
juice will get
competitive
you.
push.
Yeah,
Competitive push. Yeah.
that'll get you.
Drinking too much pre-workout probably.
One less scoop of Creed.
Yeah.
So I like my volleyball exposure as a player was so small in high school, like in growing up. I played. I mean, I also played other sports in high school. So I did the volleyball thing, and then I went into basketball, and then I went into track, and then I just kind of went to the next thing. So club was kind of on the side and just kind of got things going. But in high school, our high school coach was very blessed. He actually was a Division I women's coach in Oregon prior to coming to Hawaii, and born and raised there. But shout out to Guy Enriquez, but he brought us the entire team. There was a group of us that came in as freshmen, didn't really know anything about volleyball, quite honestly. But he kind of molded us into a group that started to really love the game, that started really wanted to play better and learn. Went through some, a lot of huli huli chicken sells off and chili plate sells and a lot of fundraisers to get us. We went to Oregon one summer.
I need you to elaborate on what those fundraisers are for us Howleys over here.
Hawaiians have the best fundraiser ideas. Like you stand on the side of the road and you have basically a wagon and on the back of it, a trailer. And the trailer's cooking chicken as you drive by. Who doesn't want to stop for this chicken that's literally cooking on the side? Anyways, we'll have to have a whole other segment on fundraising activities for your youth athletics. But Guy actually he continues to run a team camp in Oregon and various different schools. And this team camp is gigantic. We're talking like 20, 30, 40 teams depending on the location. And he does like 5 or 6 of them. He brought us there as it was the first boys team to be part of this like every girls high school team camp. And it just blew my mind. I didn't know how big volleyball was until I got off the island. Obviously, UH volleyball is gigantic, but like once you see that, like I walked into the gym. First of all, I've never been in a gym that big. Walk into the gym and there's hundreds of players, and adults and coaches and parents and staff that are just so passionate on the game. I'm like this is different. It's different. The community is different. We had the ability to go and we went to the AVP, at the time it was AVP tour, Seaside. And we went out there and they actually do a tournament for like youth or like AAA, like whatever the level you want to play. So we played in the sand tournament too. All of our high school team, we paired up and we played in the tournament. And again, same thing. I walk on the beach, first time I'm seeing this. I mean, Seaside is just, it's beautiful. But you see again, thousands of people that are out there watching the game and playing the game. And I think it just changed my whole perspective, completely changed my perspective. I was kind of on the fence on what I wanted to do. And I didn't obviously have a ton of, at the time, there was no recruiting coordinators at the time. There's no social media. So you like legit send tape off. And, I don't know who to send tape off to. So luckily somebody saw me. There was actually a recruiter that came and did things in Hawaii, and I had the chance to play. But then the rest is history. I think if I didn't go on that trip, I don't know really where my direction would have gone. It just, there are moments in life that kind of change your whole life. And I think just being exposed to all of that was, I think, definitely was a big thing for me.
Yeah, I will never forget the first time my high school coach was like, "Hey, have you ever heard of club volleyball? There's a tryout tonight." I was like, "I never heard of it. I need a ride." So he actually drove me there, and he picked me up a lot because he was just an awesome guy. And I'll never, yeah, it's the same thing. It's like, what would have happened if I never went to that tryout?
Right.
I would have never found that gym. Would have never found these people, these coaches, this support system. Who knows? Would have been still trying to do the basketball dream, which wouldn't have lived very long, probably.
It's interesting how I think everybody can kind of pinpoint it to that one moment when the switch flipped. Mine was in college when I decided to get serious about it. I got injured playing basketball and went through a little existential crisis through intermediate microeconomics seminar, which was already a hard class, and then a lot of other stressors.
It's hard enough to say, let alone take you.
And through some evaluation, I was like, I think I want to get serious about this coaching thing. And I had a great opportunity at the time to work with a good friend, Jeff Meeker, and he's like, well, let's do it. Let's get serious. Like, let's start this club and let's do it full year round and see where we can go. And having that support definitely in that moment of time, like, helped usher me down a path that I think he knew was something that would be good for me. And ultimately I found my passion of what I love doing. Makani mentioning that big tournament exposure for the first time. Do you guys recall the first time that you were in a convention center like that and saw 50, 60 courts? Frank, what was that like for you?
Yeah, we had a place called ASC in Anaheim, and it was the place that every club team played at every weekend. So it was it's where the Olympic team trained at for a while, at least while I was growing up in SoCal. So yeah, it's like you walk in, it's like a grocery store courts. It's like you got A through Z, and then you've got 10 courts going down. So I was always used to that. I think depth perception is crazy in there. Like if you're not on the wall side, like you just, it's so hard to tell. Thank God I never had to pass and serve receive, because it'd be so hard to tell just like how much space is behind the server and whatnot. But yeah, that was always something I was used to. It was actually when I moved out to the Midwest, it was like, oh, this is a culture shock. Like, where does everyone play at? Everyone just plays at different high schools. Like that was the big thing for me for sure.
Yeah, I think the playing was never. I never actually played, well, other than adults, adult open championships and whatnot. But I think the very first facility like that I saw was in Nebraska, Convention Center in Nebraska, for I think it was President's Day or something, coaching, either recruiting or coaching club. I can't remember which one it was, but I immediately figured out how overwhelming it is as soon as you walk into it. And I also figured out that if you don't really focus on what you're doing, you can kind of get like dog chasing a squirrel, because you're like there's so many things happen. It's
stimulus overload.
It is
for
way
sure.
overload. Yeah.
I remember the first time going into a gym. Mine was as a club coach, and I was maybe freshman, sophomore year of college. Like, you think you're a good coach and you're excited about the opportunity, and you walk in this gym and there's 80 volleyballs in the air at once, and just whistles and kind of that dull roar that is always happening, and then it's spiked by cheers and celebrations. Like, you realize how small you are in the volleyball world and how connected everybody is around you. But it's a very humbling and also like eye-opening, exciting experience to see just how much of the sport there is around and all the participation. It was really fun.
I got an Hawaiian question for you. So I just, growing up in LA, I always assumed that everyone in Hawaii just knew volleyball.
Everybody knows a lot of volleyball just because I think that everybody's around the beach. There's always a court there to play. I also think that not as much lately, I think they're starting to kind of turn it around. I think with Shoji leaving and Robin taking the job, I think all that's just transition, right? But like back when, in the late 90s where I was in high school, like UH was the thing. Like everybody watched games.
Yeah.
Like how, everybody watches Iowa State, or everybody goes to the Nebraska football games or Nebraska volleyball games. Like that was University of Hawaii volleyball, men's and women's for that matter.
Still is,
Still
right?
is. Yeah, it still
Still
is.
is.
It's
They're
still-
top 10 in attendance.
Yeah, it's
pretty much every year.
Oh, sure. Like it's a crazy place. But like there's not a ton of club resources, specifically on the outer island. And I'll just caveat that by I lived in the Big Island, West Side in Kona. Shout out Kona. But in Oahu, I mean, where 3/4 of the population lives, you have all kinds of clubs, right? I mean, and high-level clubs with great coaches and things like that, and facilities to support it. The outer islands, I mean, you're really trying to find somewhere to practice, and usually it's at a high school. Usually it's at odd hours because they have teams to support in the off season of volleyball as well, whether it be basketball or any like batting cages inside. I get, you know how like the gym space goes, but yeah, soccer is big too. You know, because I played a lot of soccer growing up, played a lot of golf growing up, played a lot of basketball growing up. But yeah, everybody knows the game, and I think that's the thing. The one thing is everybody knows the game very well.
That's my second question.
Like you know the game,
Yeah.
you can the flow of the game. You watch it so much that I think when you transition from just the fan to the player, I think the transition is faster because you know what the rules are.
Yeah.
But you also know that, oh hey, these are the situations that are going to be really exciting. So you try to duplicate those.
I feel like there's this huge stigma in volleyball, especially club volleyball, where the parents are trying to coach on the sidelines. It's like in Hawaii, they probably can. They probably can.
yeah. They probably. Well, it's when you bring a couple of Hawaiian players and inject them into a like in Iowa here, right? So I mean, there's a couple of Hawaiian kids here in Iowa that play on on Grandview actually. And it's funny sometimes because you see them kind of start shy and then they start opening up. I'm like, I know a lot about the game. I might be 5'0", but like they start to kind of self-coach and a peer coach. And that's really cool to watch too, right? Because it's it's not about technical. It's just about, hey, when this happens and this and this happens, they only have these. And that part of it, I think, just comes from watching a lot of volleyball.
Yeah, for sure.
If you just sit and watch and you really just understand and love the game, like you start picking some of those things up. So Frank, we talked a lot about passion. Obviously that's why we're here. You know, how are some ways that you are trying to, you know, instill and like light that fire in that club athlete?
Yeah, we get club kids at a lot of different ages. We have like a surge of kids that come in when they're probably 12, 13, and then we get another big surge of new kids that come in high school. And then we maybe get a couple that are juniors and seniors who have had some high school success and they want to maybe look at playing college volleyball. So I think it changes depending on what age group they come in at. I think the younger they are, like you just want to keep things really light, really fun, and you want to I think we almost try and like not trick them. I guess we're all kind of tricking our players a little bit, but we're trying to put them in situations where it's organically competitive and without this fear of consequences. So just trying to catch them when they're young doing things right instead of catching them doing things wrong. So that they're just trying to repeat the good things that they're hearing instead of staying away from like the bad things, the shanked ball or whatever. Like instead, let's hear more feedback, strive for more feedback on like creating early angles and hearing that and striving to hear that. And then as they get a little older, it's getting more competitive. There's more kids that are trying out, at least for our club. And so then it becomes more about the IQ of the game a little bit. Like how do you score on a bad set, you know? But it's still, I think the same principles that we had when they were younger, we're still using that as a foundational tool when they're in, you know, early level high school play. Like we're not gonna make you run for swinging out of bounds. Like we're gonna have some sort of competitive score attached to it, so that there's this natural, you know, instinct to want to do well, without the the fear of failure. So I think for us in particular, and I think there's more clubs that I think we compete against that are on the same track, where it's just like create a really great culture of trying to do things well instead of a culture of like running away from fears. Like that's a replication of the types of good coaches that I had, and it's like I don't think I'm reinventing the wheel saying any of that stuff, but like looking back, it's like, oh man, I had an awesome coach growing up who almost allowed me to do things the same way.
Yeah. What are some of the major pitfalls you see in just overall the development phase of an athlete? You know, and it's such a critical time for them.
Yeah.
And personally, you know, as well as from their volleyball careers, like what are the things that you just highlight? Say these are.
Man, there's so many factors. I think the big ones right now for the kids growing up is status. Like just comparing yourself to other kids in different situations and assuming that that's the way you have to do it too. And if that's not going on, then you know you're in the wrong place. Big rosters, I think, is a real big problem for club teams. Taking a team of 14 kids to a tournament. I get that I totally understand that you're giving that coach all the resources possible to win the match, but like at what cost? And we've started to go smaller rosters, and it's been super, super cool to just see kids learning new skills. And they're not trying to lose when we do that, but of course they're going to be in situations that development is gonna come to fruition where, you have a middle who's playing some back row because they're working on some back row stuff. They might get tipped on a bunch, but like, man, if you just keep them in that situation, and I trust that we as human beings can like acquire skill, even if you're this, quote unquote middle who shouldn't be playing back row. Like still a human being, still someone that can acquire skill, just got to put them in that situation. And I don't think that situation ever happens on big rosters. And I think that is in the club culture. I don't know if that will ever go away, but I think it should. I think small rosters is the way to go. I think sacrificing wins is okay. I
think it's all about your ultimate intention, right? And I think the opportunity for new skill development is something easily transferable, right? That's what we're looking for at that next level too. At that college level, it's not so much about teaching fundamentals, but how can I put you in a situation where we're going to work on this new tool in your toolbox and continue to take that IQ to the next level.
Yeah.
That's really important to continue to foster passion once you've already reached a certain level of expertise, let's say. So how are we continuing to build love in a sport? I think it's by trying to teach you new things, new shortcuts, new hacks to make you more efficient. So you continue to find success. That ultimately drives your passion and love as you continue to grow through that college phase. So
is that something you feel like you guys struggle with college athletes? Is like you're trying to make that developmental step, but you have to get over this hurdle of like accepting a new situation?
Being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Do you feel like that stalls your development time on your guys' level?
I don't know about stalls, but going to college is such a individual experience, individual growth experience. Like it's your first real time to govern yourself. So there's a lot of uncomfortability just in that collegiate transition naturally. So it makes sense that it just is part of your growth process, your learning process at that college level. It kind of goes hand in hand, and I think that's a really interesting time for athletes and students to kind of maneuver through that situation. And my role is to kind of give them a framework and some guidelines and some encouragement when they need it to help them wind down that path of uncomfortability through new place, away from home, new friend group, all the societal pressures throughout college and going to class. And then also we're trying to compete at a super high level. So it's a lot to juggle. No one ever said being a collegiate athlete is easy by any means, but that uncomfortability helps you get to that next phase. So I don't see it as much as a hindrance as much as a vital part of making you great.
it's just a key part. I mean, it's such a monumental step in their lives, right? And not just their volleyball journey from development to just the active part of competing in your career, but how are you dealing with all of the other changes that are making you uncomfortable? You mentioned not being a college athlete is not easy. Being a college coach is also not very easy for the same exact reasons, right? It's a juggling act. When do you push? When do you pull back?
100%. And a lot of it's out of your control, which I think that's hard for all of us as coaches. Obviously, we like control to some degree, or we wouldn't be in the positions that we're in. But yeah, that becomes the struggle on my end, is how do you help without be overbearing or tell them this is the way to do it. Like I can't force feed you the answers. It's the teach a man to fish versus give a man a fish type of philosophy. So how can we provide support and information that maybe helps you make that educated decision or helps you figure out how to do it yourself? Like that to me is a more valuable goal for someone going through that uncomfortable transition period.
Yeah, and I think it becomes a lasting development skill, whether that's a athletic skill or a personal skill or a life skill. Like if you are learning those things on your own and kind of you're getting all the nuggets and then you're kind of like, oh, light, to your point earlier, light bulb, right? That light bulb's going to stick.
100%. It's going to be easier to turn on again and again.
Exactly.
That's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like on the club side, we are responsible for putting them in situations to make them feel uncomfortable and like guide them through that process of
The philosophy. I think it's and this is a large topic for maybe another episode.
Yeah.
But just the overall philosophy on you win and you learn, or you just learn. There shouldn't really be a third option of just like the losing part of it is that's the competition, but that's not the development. And I think that's what we are trying to highlight here, right? Is that phase is about developing, and you're gonna take L's. And to your point, on a team of 9 versus a team of 14, you're gonna take your L's, and that's okay. You're gonna have someone's gonna be gone for prom, and your middle is gonna be cruising in right back and getting smoked from the right side. But that's okay, because it's you either win and you learn, or you learn.
Yeah, like who wins the tenure battle in that situation?
Right.
Is it the kid that got to fail a bunch when they were younger, and then in college they were used to all those situations, and they're cool with new things, and they've been exposed to that already? Maybe they don't have to work through that uncomfortable phase as long as other kids in college. Or is it the kid that played on a 14-person team who only DS'd when their team was up by 10 points every time? Does that kid benefit from that situation versus maybe her playing on a small roster and playing libero the whole year on an 8-person team or 9-person team, and maybe they're not winning as much, but she's responsible for digging a bunch of balls. She's responsible for playing against good teams and dealing with that situation. But that's tough because now that kid, hops on her phone, hops on whatever social media, is comparing it to the other liberos in her class or the other kids around the state who are winning tournaments. And we are at fault to this too sometimes as a club. We're not posting on Instagram or anything about like, this kid had a great development day. Like we probably need to like change the status quo, but
action item out of podcast. Carly really knocked it out of the park today. She
But that's a great thing for us to like think about, is like how can we like navigate the status part a little bit and like reward and celebrate kids who are in those situations, because I think long term those are the kids who are going to be super good.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so fascinating to me because we learn so much more from being put in uncomfortable situations, and that translates, from that development stage in club to your playing days in your collegiate career when injuries happen. You're gonna have to put kids in and players in different situations that they don't really know, or you're transitioning them from something that they were to something that you believe, because of the skill set that they have, that they could be even greater in something different.
I think Frank nailed it. It's part of it's catching them doing the right things, and part of it is the way you go about communicating and celebrating their failures. If the process looks the way it should, you know what I mean. If they're being intentional and trying this new skill, we're going to pick out those 2 or 3 components that they did really well, even if they end up waffling that ball 30 feet out of bounds. So there's a lot of those types of opportunities in transition. I think it's about how you stay focused and communicate the highlights of what they're trying to go. So I think so much is maintaining confidence through situations where you're not confident in the skill that you're doing. So how can we continue to celebrate those actions that will eventually lead to that light bulb or that thing clicking and us bouncing that ball finally that we've been working on for the last month.
Right.
But that process takes a while, and you got to be okay with it taking a while.
Yeah. There's a lot of learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and once those athletes go through, and I think the other part of the passion and kind of identifying the game is just what happens after you play. And I think, especially with the number of clubs that are around now, there's a lot of opportunity for current players to start, especially collegiate players, to start coaching club. And I think that transition is also really interesting as well. A lot of them, how are they being put into that situation? Are they growing that passion as a developer to really other young players, even though that they're still in their playing career? And I think that period of time, the 3 of us are point in case. Like we're young enough to really relate, but that passion bug bit us hard right during that time. And I think that window is small to really, really influence, I think, sometimes that younger coach to say, all right, it's not about the W's. It's not about the medals. It's not about the awards. It's about how are you learning from your players also potentially not succeeding, but learning. I think the other part of it too is back to your point around clubs. It's sometimes hard. You don't post the developmental day. You post those wins, right? And if you're a younger coach, where are you hitching your coaching career to, right? We all have people that we have really been mentors, and I think who you hitch it to is not about the wins. It's not about the big shock and awe, but it's, do you trust them? Do you are you going to listen? Are you consuming? Are you authentic with what you know and what you don't know? Do you have the availability to put yourself in uncomfortable situations? And I think from just the overall growth of the game, I think the more we can challenge our younger coaches as they continue to develop to then replace us, because it's just the circle of life. Like how do we influence them to start thinking about it more just broadly, right? It's about just the overall passion and the development, and challenge the status quo. Just challenge the status quo, but you have to go through the process. And I think that's what I sometimes see, as come out, you're right out of college, you get the 18U team that's going to win Open, and all of a sudden it becomes like, all right, that's your path, right? Whereas, how can you really gain those practice skills and develop your passion for practice? I think that's important. It can't just be about the game. So I think the development from a player, and even more interesting, player simultaneous to a coach, is something that is starting to happen much, much more often, I think, with a number of clubs that are out there, especially with 2s teams, 3s teams, 4s teams, depending on the club. Like, you need coaches who know volley, so where do you go?
Yep.
I think that's a huge advantage to that player
100%.
coaching. I know I'll speak for myself here, but I became a much better player after coaching for a few years, and like just seeing that game in a little bit different perspective. You have to pay attention to things that you probably hadn't even thought about before. So I think that's a huge advantage if you are a player. Look at coaching club and see how it helps your game overall.
The IQ part of it.
For sure, and even the teammate part, the way you can communicate cross-positionally, just adds a completely different element to your game when you're used to managing an entire match rather than thinking about, all right, I'm an outside, I need to pass to attack, how are they blocking, right? You're thinking about what's their blocking scheme as a whole, and what can I do that's going to open up something for another teammate. Just that widened view perspective that you get as a coach can make you much more impactful as a player, even if your statistics don't necessarily improve.
I became an actual teammate after I coached, for sure.
That's a good point.
I was always the person that butted heads with people, and when I coached, I was like, we had a couple of girls that were butting heads. I was like, oh, that is literally me. What a detriment I am on my team. And that was a huge eye opener for sure.
The passion of the game is just at every phase, isn't it? It's beautiful to see that each of us, regardless of what phase we're supporting that athlete, we can really trigger that fire, we can trigger that passion, whether it's in that development stage, in that club stage, or really how to even find volleyball, right? To, as you grow into that prospect who is, hey, I really kind of love this thing. And I want to make this part of my life, maybe even part of my collegiate life, and how you can really continue to learn and be uncomfortable. And maybe that triggers something even more. It says, this is now when I'm going from love to this is my passion. And I want to be a volleyhead. And I want to now go and coach and develop and just be a part and keep volley part of my life moving forward. And that's what you're going to see here at Triple Blockheads. But that's our episode for today. We are at all the social media outlets at Triple Blockheads. I just spelled that Triple Blockheads out. Looking forward to future episodes with my man Frank, Mark. I'm Makani. Talk to you guys soon.
Peace, love, volleyball.
Blockheads.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Triple Blockheads. Make sure you like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss an episode.